Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Azure Developers.NET Day 2024. I'm Justin from Microsoft as Principal Cloud Advocate. Today, I'm going to talk about Azure API Center that empowers .NET developers' application development velocity. As developers, we are both consumers and producers of APIs. Almost every day, we use APIs. At the same time, we develop APIs. But from the maintenance and governance point of view, are you really sure that your and your organization's APIs are okay? A report says that more than 90% of organizations will invest more on APIs for the next 12 months. It was 3% increased from the previous year. The same report also says that almost half of organizations, they spent more of their development effort for working with APIs. So what do those numbers really mean to us? Our application ecosystem consists of a vast number of APIs, and we rely on those APIs. But it has caused a lot of trouble to us, especially within organizations. It's called API sprawl. In other words, in our organization, there are too many APIs scattered out and out of our maintenance with poor maintenance effort. As a result, not all APIs are visible or managed. API discoverability and usage rates are lower than expected. There are unused APIs called shadow APIs or zombie APIs, and they have become the targets from the malicious attackers. And those APIs have been away from our compliance, organizational standard compliance. So these kind of things we have been experienced a lot because of the API sprawl. Therefore, there have been many requests for the central inventory of organizational API portfolio. It doesn't matter where the APIs are hosted. They need to be managed in a central repository. It doesn't matter what type of APIs are. They need to be managed in a central repository. So that we all know the APIs we've got in our organization are properly governed, like where they are, what their current statuses are, how compliant they are, and so on. Based on those requests, we now have introduced Azure API Center to be acting as the central repository of your organization's API portfolio. So, with our Azure API Center, you can register all sorts of APIs, including OpenAPI, WSDL, GraphQL, gRPC, and more. You can also manage the lifecycle of those APIs from design and development to deprecated and retiring. You can also manage metadata of individual APIs, like who the owner is, whether it's compliant or not, where the code repository is, and so on. And you can also handle events raised from the APIs about API status changes. And you can, with this event, you can take further actions. Now, so what kind of Azure API Center offer for us? First of all, API Center offers you with this API inventory feature. So like this one, you can register new APIs through GitHub, Visual Studio, and Visual Studio Code. There are a bunch of existing APIs already in your organization. So how can we handle these kind of existing APIs then? You can register them into Azure API Center with simply running the command like Azure CLI or import from Azure API management. You can also register shadow APIs that you don't directly manage, but you want to keep in feasibility. What about the governance of your APIs? Building and maintaining APIs are important, but at the same time, governing those APIs is as important as building and maintaining them. So Azure API Center offers many governance capabilities, including API metadata tracking and API process automation, API design linting, and so on. Another great feature of Azure API Center is discoverability and ability to consume. What that really means is, here are a few examples. We are offering an open source based Azure API Center portal, so you can deploy and customize it based on your organization's needs. There are extensions for Visual Studio Code and GitHub, so that you can easily integrate your APIs with your preferred developer tools. And of course, with GitHub Copilot, you can analyze your APIs within Visual Studio Code to get more shift-left experiences before actually deploying it into the cloud. Right, now I'm going to show you a few demos how API Center is used to accelerate your development experience. I'm going to quickly build an ASP.NET Core Web API and get the OpenAPI document from here. Then with this OpenAPI document, I'm going to run the client-side linting using Visual Studio Code extension. And once the linting is over, I'm going to register those APIs to Azure API Center with various ways. Then I will show you how the server-side linting works. Then import existing APIs from Azure API Management and handle some custom metadata things. And finally, I'm going to test your registered APIs from your local machine using Visual Studio Code extension and generate client SDKs. .NET Client SDKs to integrate with your existing application. Okay, let's go into the demo. Now, I have Visual Studio. So I have Visual Studio. Then I'm going to run the .NET application. So I have the API application. So I have API application and a front-end application. So I'm going to run this API application. So see how it's going. Now, once it's done, then it will automatically show up the Swagger UI screen. So let's wait a few more seconds, then it will show up. Once the application is built, then the Swagger UI will be showing up. So let's wait a few more seconds. Now it's being built. Okay, so we have now we have the API application, right? Now, so when I click the Swagger UI button here, and this is the actual OpenAPI document. So I will copy this over and put into here. So weatherfocus.json file. Then it says, okay, so that's the normal application. And as you can see, there is a yellow line and there is a red line. And with this red line, it says something is wrong, right? And what this happens because I used the API Center extension, right? And if I install the API Center extension, and then I can do setting the API style guide like this. So there are a few menus, including Microsoft Style Guide and OWASP Style Guide as a default. So I will, if I change to use the Microsoft Style Guide, then that linting result will be slightly different, right? So it used to be some sort of red lines here, but now it all changes to yellow line. And if I change it to the OWASP style, then it changes a little bit there, right? So yellow line and red line here. What that means is that each style guide has a different rule set. That means your organization can customize your that rule set for your business requirement. So I'm going to change it to some sort of the custom rule set. So there is a rule set called resources rule set here, and open this. Then it will change the linting result. And there is the yellow line, and there is another, the red line here, and it is based on this rule set. So that rule set comes from this one. So it is based on the Open API spec. Then my organization wants to put some additional value on there about the versioning stuff. This is the versioning stuff, right? So, but in here, there is a bunch of yellow lines and red lines. I have no idea what that really means. So let's go into the GitHub Copilot chat so that we can analyze what that really means, right? So I'm going to ask GitHub Copilot about this. So workspace, explain weather forecast.json file. Then it says, okay, so I need to choose which line I need to get explained. So I choose that red line here. Then it says, okay, it's about the versioning stuff, okay? But it doesn't say anything what is wrong here. So I choose this the rule set as well. Then again, it asks the GitHub Copilot again what I need to change here. So based on the oas.yaml file, what should I do? Then it says, okay, it used to be version 1.0, but based on this rule set, it should be changed to like v1.0, something like that. Aha. So that means my organization has the standard of versioning standard, right? I mean the versioning formatting standard. So, right. So how can I change these kind of things now? So now I'm going to update our API application to make this happen. So there is a program.cs file. Then, so I will comment out, and I will comment in, uncomment it, and I will also comment out, and I will also uncomment this. So by doing so, when I go into here, it has more like the metadata information is there, okay? And with here, so I have versioning thing as well. So let's take a look. Then I will build this application again, and what will happen? So I will run this application again. Okay, I will run this application again. Then it will show us some sort of different results. Now, so once application is built, and it will show up a different Swagger UI screen. So let's take a look. Now, so we have different Swagger UI. Now, so as you can see, this is the previous one, and this is the new one. So can you see the differences? So I put all those things and make it more descriptive. So if I click this one, then it changes the version as well. So I will copy this file and put into the Visual Studio Code again. There's no yellow lines or red lines, but let's change a little bit here. You don't see the real changes. So I'm replacing the existing OpenAPI document with this one. Now, it used to have a lot of yellow lines and red lines. Now it's all gone. That means our OpenAPI document is compliant with our organizational policies. I didn't say the previous, the weather forecast JSON file is not compliant with, it's not following the OpenAPI spec. It follows the OpenAPI spec, but now is compliant with our organizational policy by running the API linting on Visual Studio Code. Now, our application, our API document is ready. Now I will upload this the OpenAPI document into the Azure API Center. So there is the API Center, the already provisioned in our Azure portal. Then the first one is using Azure portal. So click the register API. And let's say, oops, whether for past API, and API type is REST, and version title is version 1.1.1. Now it's all done. So let's create. So while I was doing that, oops, on the version lifecycle, another one here. So let's say it's a design phase. Then I will create the APIs, and it creates API and version, and create it here. I created version as well, but I didn't put any OpenAPI document yet. So once going to here, then I can add definitions, right? Then once it is the opening up, so definition screen and here appear. Now I'm going to add OpenAPI document here click the add definition button. Now let's say whether for past API. Now the space name is OpenAPI document, and I'm going to choose my OpenAPI document that I just showed you. So if I click the weather forecast reviewed.json file and then create the one, so it will upload our definition page. And once I click that, then they will show you about the API definitions. So I click the show definition, and it shows us with the OpenAPI document that I just uploaded. Now API definition is coming up. So that's the API document that I just uploaded. Now there is another button here, analysis here. So that's actually the server-side linting. So I showed you with the client-side linting with Visual Studio Code. The same thing is happening within the API Center. So there is an error, there is a warning sign. Because I put the latest reviewed version of API, so there is no error or warning, right? So this is how the server-side linting works. Then now I'm going to add another APIs to the API Center through Visual Studio Code. So there is the Visual Studio Code. Now I'm going to go here, API Center, and if I refresh this one, then there is a weather forecast API that just registered. Now if I click the register API here, and there are two ways. One is the manual way, and the other one is the the GitHub Actions way. So I'm going to choose the step-by-step, and then API title should be pet store API. It is REST API, and the version is 1.0.11. And we can say development, and definition title is pet store API. It is Open API, and I'm going to choose that the pet store API here. Now, the API is being registered through the Visual Studio Code, then it will be registered like this. So I have Pesto API registered in the API Center with this, like this, right? So that's all good. Now let's go back to the Azure portal there, and so there is APIs. So I just register Pesto API. But this time, let's go into the API analysis as well. So how's the difference? So there is weather forecast API that I just registered through Azure portal, which doesn't have any errors. But Pesto API has errors and warnings like this. But it doesn't mean that Pesto API there is an error. It's not compliant with our organizational policy. So we might need to slightly accommodate the Pesto APIs to the compliant with our organizational policy. The Pesto API itself is working, but it's not compliant with our organizational policy. That's the main thing, right? Now, this is how the server-side linting works. Now, once we go into the Pesto API, let's go into the Pesto API here, and there will be that API is built by a third party, but we haven't completed compliance review, right? These are the custom metadata thing, right? So this is the custom metadata that we can add for our organizational policy. So, for example, if there is an API where this API code is hosted, something like repository URL, and if the API is registered, what sort of compliance review process has done or not. So this kind of the flag is here, right? So these kind of things we can do the thing. Now, there is interesting thing is that API Center has the event grid integration. So there are a bunch of event handler like this, and these event handlers are coming from the logic apps here. So if I register the APIs and it has something like, it shows that event captured by, event captured by like this. So with this logic app, we can do event handling. But in here for now, we only captured event in the raised, right? So when we put the additional logic in the logic app workflow, then we can handle those kind of custom metadata things. But for now, I'm going to use the Azure CLI for to handle those events. So let's get back to the Visual Studio Code here. That now I'm going to run the custom metadata things. So I have resource group, and I have the API Center, and I just registered Pesto API, right? So this needs to be reviewed. So this needs to be compliance reviewed. So I get the custom metadata. Now I got the custom properties, which means these custom properties, compliance review, need to have value like need for review. So with this Azure CLI, the command, so we can update custom properties like this. So if I run this application, run this command, then it will show us the custom metadata properties updated like this. So let's get back to the portal. Now, I have APIs, and before I was showing you, before that, Pesto API doesn't have compliance reviewed value. Now we have the compliance reviewed, the properties have some sort of this need for review value, because I did the update that value through Azure CLI. That can be done through the Azure Logic app at some stage, right? So this is how we can handle the custom metadata things. And now we have registered all the new APIs from Azure Portal, through Azure Portal or Visual Studio Code. But in your organization, there are a bunch of existing APIs within API management. So for example, here we have API management, and there is an API like this. So we have API like USPTO API registered in our the API management. So how can we import these already registered APIs from API management to API Center portal? So there are a few ways, but now I'm going to use Azure CLI to achieve this. So yeah, and I'm going to run this command again. So I get the resource group, I get the API Center. Now I have, so once the API Center is done, Then I get the API management. With all this API management instance, now, so I'm going to run this one, this command. This command says import from API management. And this API management, all APIs registered in the API management can be imported to API Center. So let's run this command, and it will take a few seconds. So what it does is that we can, so there are another ways. There is another ways. We can like export our API document directly from the API management and store it into your local machine, then upload, register that API document to the API Center. That's one way. But now what I've done is that I'm using the API Azure CLI command directly import API management to the API Center portal. So once it's done, it will show up in this screen. So let's wait a few seconds, but it takes a little bit of time. Done. Okay. So if I refresh this page, then it will show us with USPTO API, which is imported from API management to the API Center portal. Now, the final demo is that I'm going to utilize this registered API. So if I click the Pesto API, then there is an Open API documentation like this. Then this is familiar. You will be familiar with this Swagger UI screen, right? So we can test it through this UI screen like this, something like this. Also, there is another one, generative HTTP file using the REST client Visual Studio Code extension. Then we can send like the request like this. So if I click the request button, and it will show us like that. So if you prefer graphical way, you can use this. If you prefer like text-based way, you can use this kind of thing, right? So you can test your APIs, register the APIs, either UI or the text way. Now, another one is that generative API client. What that means is that if I have already the existing application, then I want to integrate my Pesto APIs to that application. What should I do? Then it is easier to generate the client SDK, right? So if I click the generative API, generate API client, it uses Kyoto extensions. Then it will show up what kind of the APIs I need to generate. So I choose everything for now. Then I click the create button. Then it says, okay, I need to give it a name, pet store client. Then namespace is web app API client. Then the generated SDK is stored into the net source web app API client. And this is the fun part. So Kyoto is generating the client SDK in various languages. So as a .NET developer, I'm just using C# for now. And it is being stored in, it is being generated now, and it will be stored, created within, in here. So there's an API client, is being generated now. It will be generated soon. Okay, it's all done. So these are all just created. Oops. All just created, right? And then if I want to use, so if I want to use this one, is client SDK itself is generated, but it's not connected to our applications yet. So I'm going to copy a few files for this. Then it will create extensions. It will create a UI component. It will update, use the home, the Razor file, something like this. So I'm going to use this component, right? So, right, I'm going to run this app, the Blazor app again, then see how it's going. So once it is being built and run the Blazor WebAssembly application, then it will show us with the pages. Now it's showing up. So it's being built with this one. So this list of available paths is coming from the APIs that a client SDK. Now, so that's how that component is actually says like this. It is calling the path store client, and it is calling the find by status API through that client SDK. So that's how we can do. So this is the end of my demo. So now let's conclude this session. Throughout this session, we have discussed why Azure API Center is introduced and what Azure API Center offers to the developers. And finally, we have experienced Azure API Center with several demos. But that's not all. Now it's your turn. So if you want to play around Azure API Center today, please visit these pages for Azure API Center, Visual Studio Code extension, and Azure API Center Analyzer tools. Please take a screenshot here. And another one about the Azure.NET Day is that there are many learning resources and cloud skill challenges as well. So please visit these links. Take a screenshot here. And if you want to enjoy more .NET features, then you need to install .NET 8 SDK today. So please go into .NET 8 and download it and install it on your machine and play around with it. Right. Thanks for listening. This is Justin. I will see you next time.